Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora's edge and watched the stars through the main screen. The ship was huge, almost 2 miles long, and carried 200 people deep into space. They had been exploring the far edges of human territory for 3 years now. Jake was tired but proud of his crew and their mission. The communication officer turned around in her chair. Her name was Linda Hayes, and she looked worried. "Captain, we got something from Earth," she said. Jake walked over to her station. Earth was their home world, the center of humanity's great empire that spread across 400 star systems. "Put it on speaker," Jake ordered. The message was short and strange. A man's voice came through the speakers, calm but scared. "The gardens are burning. Remember us, then nothing, just the empty sound of space." Jake felt cold inside. "When did this come in?" he asked Linda. "About an hour ago, sir. I tried to send a reply but got no answer. I tried again and again. Nothing comes back." Dr. Lisa Parker walked onto the bridge. She was the ship's expert on alien life and one of the smartest people Jake knew. "What was that message about gardens?" she asked. Jake shook his head. "I don't know. Earth has many cities, but no big gardens that would matter in a crisis." He turned to Linda. "Keep trying to reach them. Try the colonies too. Try anyone who will answer." For the next 3 days, Linda tried to contact Earth. She sent messages to the government, to the military, to anyone who might respond. No one answered. It was like Earth had just stopped talking to the rest of the galaxy. Dr. Parker came to Jake's office on the 4th day. She carried a tablet with data from their long-range sensors. "I've been checking with other human ships and colonies," she said. "Earth isn't the only one that went silent." Jake looked at the tablet. A map showed the human empire with red dots marking worlds that had stopped communicating. Earth was red, so were the colonies closest to Earth. The pattern moved outward like a wave of silence. "How many worlds?" Jake asked. 47 so far. All the inner colonies. Some of the middle rim territories too. It's moving outward from Earth toward the edge colonies. Jake studied the map. Humanity had built their empire over 200 years. They were good at war, good at building, good at surviving in places that would kill other species. Human colonies existed on frozen worlds, desert planets, and even in the empty space between stars. Now something was making them all go quiet. "Sir," Linda called from the bridge. "I'm getting a message from a ship called the Ranger's Dream. They're about 6 light years from here." Jake and Dr. Parker hurried to the bridge. The message came through clearly, a woman's voice, shaky and scared. "This is Captain Betty Walsh of the Ranger's Dream. We're carrying refugees from the Beta Centauri system. Earth Command ordered all ships to evacuate. Something is coming. Something terrible. We don't know what it is, but it leaves nothing behind. If anyone receives this, stay away from the inner systems. Stay away from Earth," the message ended. Jake felt sick. Beta Centauri had 5 human worlds with over 1 billion people. "Linda, try to contact the Ranger's Dream directly." Linda worked at her console for several minutes. "No answer, sir. Either they're too far away or—" She didn't finish the sentence. Dr. Parker pulled up more data on her tablet. "Jake, I've been thinking about that last message from Earth. The gardens are burning. What if it wasn't talking about real gardens?" "What do you mean?" "Humans call Earth the garden world. It's where we all came from. If Earth is the garden, then the message means Earth itself is burning." Jake felt his hands shake. Earth had 12 billion people. It was the heart of human civilization. Without Earth, the human empire would fall apart like a house made of cards. "Sir," Linda called again. "Long-range sensors are picking up something. A ship heading our way. It's moving fast." On the main screen, a small dot grew larger. It was a human ship, but it looked damaged. Parts of its hull were missing and its engines sparked with bad electricity. "This is the merchant ship Lucky Strike," came a weak voice over the radio. "We need help. Our engines are failing." Jake ordered his crew to bring the Lucky Strike into the Aurora's Edge's main bay. When the damaged ship landed, 12 people stumbled out. They looked hungry and scared. Their leader was an old man named Pete Collins who ran cargo between the colonies. Pete sat in Jake's office and drank hot coffee with shaking hands. "It came out of nowhere," he said. "A ship bigger than anything I've ever seen. Bigger than a city. It didn't attack us. It just took people." "Took them how?" Dr. Parker asked. "Beams of light. Like teleporters, but different. The light touched people and they just vanished. Not dead, not hurt, just gone. My crew of 30 became 12 in about 10 minutes. We ran. We've been running for weeks. Jake leaned forward. Did you see what happened to the planets? Pete nodded slowly. We watched from far away. The big ship moved over New Shanghai Colony. Lights came down like rain. When the lights stopped, the planet looked the same, but no one answered our calls. No one at all. Dr. Parker wrote notes on her tablet. How big was this ship? Like I said, bigger than a city. Maybe bigger than an island. It was dark and smooth, and it moved without making any sound we could hear. Jake made his decision. Linda, set course for Earth, maximum speed. Sir, that will take us 3 years even at full power. Then we better get started. Dr. Parker looked worried. Jake, if something destroyed Earth, we might be flying into a trap. Jake stood up and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity's greatest worlds were going silent one by one. His people, his species, his entire civilization might be dying. He couldn't just run away and hide. We're the only ship out here with the equipment to study what's happening, he said. We have scientists, weapons, and a good crew. If humanity is in trouble, we need to find out what kind of trouble it is. Pete finished his coffee. Captain, whatever you decide, be careful. That thing out there, it's not like us. It thinks different. It acts different. And it's winning, Jake nodded. The Aurora's Edge began its long journey toward Earth and toward whatever had made the garden world burn. He just hoped they would arrive in time to make a difference. 2 years passed as the Aurora's Edge traveled toward Earth. Captain Jake Morrison watched his crew work every day, knowing they might be flying toward their own deaths. The ship's sensors picked up more refugee vessels along the way, but most were too damaged to save. The few survivors they rescued all told the same story. A massive ship had appeared, lights had taken people away, and entire worlds went silent. Dr. Lisa Parker spent most of her time studying the reports from survivors. She noticed patterns that scared her. The enemy ship always appeared without warning. It never destroyed buildings or cities. It just took people and left everything else exactly as it was. No one who got taken by the lights ever came back. Commander Alex Carter ran the ship's military operations. He was a good soldier who had fought in wars against hostile alien species. But this enemy was different. How do you fight something that doesn't want to destroy you? He asked Jake one day. It wants to capture you. The Aurora's Edge reached the outer edge of human space and found their first abandoned colony. New Haven had been home to 3 million people just 6 months ago. Now it was empty. Jake ordered Carter to take a team down to investigate. Carter's shuttle landed in the main city. The streets were clean and quiet. Cars sat parked where their owners had left them. Shops had their doors open like people were just stepping out for a minute. But no people walked anywhere. No sounds came from any building. This is creepy, said Sergeant Kevin Brooks, one of Carter's soldiers. It looks like everyone just vanished in the middle of the day. Carter led his team through the city center. They found restaurants with food still on tables. The food was old now, but hadn't been touched by animals or bugs. They found schools with children's toys scattered in playgrounds. They found homes with family pictures on walls and clothes hanging in closets. Sir, over here, called Private Jenny Miller. She was looking at a strange, sparkly dust on the ground near a playground. The dust covered about 20 square feet and glittered like tiny diamonds. Carter knelt down and took out a sample container. The dust felt warm to his touch and seemed to move slightly in the container. Get Dr. Parker down here, he radioed to the ship. Dr. Parker arrived an hour later with a full science team. She studied the strange dust under a portable microscope. What she saw made her step back in surprise. The dust wasn't dust at all. It was made of tiny crystals that were somehow alive. These crystals are organic, she told Carter. They're not quite plant and not quite animal. They seem to exist in a state between living and non-living matter. Chief Engineer Maria Santos examined the colony's power systems and found something equally strange. Every piece of human technology had been changed. Computers, vehicles, communication equipment, even simple tools now had tiny alien components attached to them. The components were so small that most people would never notice them. It's like something was studying our technology, Maria told Jake over the radio. These components aren't controlling anything. They're just watching and recording. Jake felt cold as he realized what this meant. The enemy hadn't just taken the people. It had studied everything they left behind. It was learning about humanity. The Aurora's Edge left New Haven and continued toward Earth. They found more empty colonies along the way. Each one told the same story. People vanished. Cities stood empty. and strange crystals marked the places where the lights had touched the ground. After visiting 12 empty worlds, the Aurora's Edge received a signal from human ships. A small fleet had gathered at the edge of the Vega system. Jake ordered his ship to meet them. The fleet was led by Admiral Kate Sullivan aboard the battleship Defiance. Sullivan was a tough woman who had commanded fleets in the war against the insect-like Zephyrians. She welcomed Jake aboard her ship and showed him what remained of humanity's space navy. 47 ships, Sullivan said as they walked through the Defiance's war room. That's all that's left of 800 vessels. The rest are gone along with their crews. Jake looked at the tactical display showing the positions of the remaining human ships. How many people total? About 15,000 military personnel. Maybe 30,000 civilians on the support ships. We've been trying to track the enemy ship, but it moves too fast and disappears between attacks. Dr. Parker joined them in the war room. She had been sharing data with the fleet's scientists. Admiral, we think we know what we're dealing with. The crystal residue, the technology modifications, the selective taking of people. It all points to one thing. What? Sullivan asked. Collection. Someone or something is collecting our species. Jake felt his stomach drop. You mean like specimens? Exactly. Think about how human scientists study animals. We tag them, track them, study their behavior, and sometimes take samples for research. That's what's happening to us, but on a massive scale. Sullivan crossed her arms. So we're dealing with alien scientists? Dr. Parker nodded. But scientists with technology so advanced that we look like insects to them. They can take our people without us being able to stop them. They can modify our technology without us noticing until it's too late. Commander Carter spoke up from across the room. If they're collecting us, where are they taking the people? Are they still alive? We don't know, Dr. Parker admitted. But the fact that they're being careful not to damage our cities suggests they want to preserve us in some way. Admiral Sullivan turned to Jake. Your ship has the best sensors in the fleet. We need you to help us track this thing. We think it's heading for Earth next. Jake thought about the billions of people on Earth. His parents lived there. His sister and her children lived there. Everyone he had ever known before joining the space service lived there. What's the plan? He asked. Sullivan showed him the fleet's positions on the tactical display. We're going to follow it to Earth. Maybe we can't stop it, but we can study it. We need to learn everything we can about this enemy. Dr. Parker looked worried. Admiral, with respect, following this thing might just mean we all get captured too. Maybe, Sullivan replied. But we can't just run away while Earth dies. We're the only humans left who know what's happening. If we don't try to help, who will? Jake understood her point. The human empire had been built by people who refused to give up when things looked hopeless. They had survived wars, plagues, and disasters that would have destroyed other species. This was just another test. The Aurora's Edge will join your fleet, Jake told Sullivan. But we do this smart. We stay far enough away to observe but close enough to help if we can. Sullivan nodded. Agreed. Our scouts report the enemy ship is 3 days ahead of us. It's moving directly toward Earth. Jake felt sick thinking about what would happen when that massive ship reached his home world. 12 billion people lived on Earth. If the pattern held, they would all vanish in a matter of hours. The combined human fleet began its journey toward Earth. Jake stood on his bridge and watched the stars, knowing that each hour brought them closer to the end of human civilization as they knew it. But he also knew that humans had never accepted defeat quietly. Whatever happened at Earth, they would face it with courage. Admiral Kate Sullivan called all ship captains to a meeting aboard the Defiance. Captain Jake Morrison joined 20 other commanders in the battleship's main conference room. The news was not good. Our scouts have confirmed it, Sullivan announced. Earth is silent. No communications, no ship traffic, no signals of any kind. Whatever happened to the other colonies has happened to our home world. Jake felt his heart break. 12 billion people lived on Earth, including everyone he had ever loved. Now they were gone, taken by lights from an alien ship that humanity couldn't understand or fight. Dr. Lisa Parker stood up from her seat. She had been working with scientists from all the ships in the fleet. We've learned more about our enemy. We know what it calls itself. Everyone in the room turned to look at her. It calls itself the Curator. We picked up fragments of its communications using our most sensitive equipment. The signals are incredibly complex, but we've decoded some basic concepts. Sullivan leaned forward. What kind of concepts? Collection, preservation, study, and protection. The Curator isn't trying to destroy us. From its perspective, it's saving us. Captain Bob Martinez of the cargo ship Free Trader spoke up. Saving us from what? Dr. Parker pulled up data on the room's main screen. From ourselves. The curator has been watching human expansion for decades. It sees how we fight wars, destroy environments, and compete for resources. It believes we'll eventually destroy ourselves if left alone. Jake stood up angrily. So it's taking our people to protect them from their own choices? That appears to be correct. The curator has done this before to other species. We found evidence of at least 12 different alien civilizations that have vanished over the past million years. All followed the same pattern: rapid expansion, then sudden disappearance. Lieutenant Paul Mitchell, the Aurora's Edge's communications officer, raised his hand. Dr. Parker, if this thing has existed for 1,000,000 years, how advanced is its technology? Dr. Parker looked grim. Beyond our ability to measure. To the curator, we're probably no more advanced than ants are to us. It can manipulate matter and energy in ways we don't understand. It can travel faster than our best ships. It can take our people without us being able to stop it. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. They were facing an enemy that saw them as insects to be collected and studied. Admiral Sullivan broke the silence. Where does it take the people it collects? We believe they're kept alive, but in some kind of suspended state. The curator wants to preserve species exactly as they are when it finds them. That means keeping individuals alive but stopping their natural development. Commander Alex Carter from the Aurora's Edge asked the question everyone was thinking. Is there any way to fight this thing? Dr. Parker hesitated. Possibly. The curator's technology is biological as much as mechanical. It uses living systems to power its ships and maintain its collections. Living systems can be infected or disrupted. Jake felt a spark of hope. You mean like a virus? Something like that. We'd need to create a quantum virus that could disrupt the curator's biomechanical systems. But getting close enough to deploy it would be extremely dangerous. Sullivan stood up and walked to the front of the room. Let's assume we could build this virus. What would we need to do? Someone would have to get aboard the curator's ship and release the virus into its central systems. The ship is massive, probably the size of a small moon, but it would have to have a central control area where all its systems connect. Captain Martinez shook his head. That's a suicide mission. Even if we could get someone aboard, they'd never make it back out. Dr. Parker nodded sadly. You're probably right. But the virus might do more than just damage the ship. If it works correctly, it could disrupt the systems holding the collected species. It might free some of the people who were taken. Jake thought about his parents, his sister, and her children somewhere aboard that massive alien ship. They might still be alive, waiting for rescue. Even if the chances were tiny, he had to try. How long would it take to build this virus? He asked. With our combined resources, maybe 2 weeks. But we'd need to get much closer to the curator's ship to study its systems properly. Sullivan turned to the tactical display. Our scouts report the curator's ship is holding position near Earth. It seems to be processing the population it collected. This might be our only chance to get close while it's distracted. Lieutenant Mitchell spoke up again. Admiral, I've been monitoring the curator's communications. There's something strange about them. The signals seem almost lonely. Dr. Parker looked interested. What do you mean? The curator talks to itself a lot. It makes records of everything it collects, but it doesn't seem to communicate with anyone else. I think it might be the only one of its kind. Jake realized what this meant. It's been alone for 1,000,000 years, collecting species because it has nothing else to do. Dr. Parker nodded slowly. That would explain its behavior. It preserves other species because it can't bear to see them disappear the way its own species probably did. Admiral Sullivan looked around the room. This doesn't change our situation. We still need to try to stop it and rescue our people if possible. Jake made his decision. The Aurora's Edge will carry the virus to the curator's ship. We have the best stealth systems in the fleet and the most advanced science equipment. Commander Carter immediately objected. Sir, that's too dangerous. Let me take a small team in a shuttle. If we fail, you and the ship can escape. No, Alex. We need the ship's full sensor array to find the right location aboard the curator's vessel, and we need our science team to deploy the virus properly. Dr. Parker looked worried. Jake, even with our stealth systems, the curator will probably detect us long before we reach its ship. Maybe. But we have to try. We can't just abandon everyone who is taken. Sullivan nodded approvingly. I'll take the rest of the fleet to a safe distance and monitor your progress. If you succeed in damaging the curator's ship, we'll move in to help with any evacuation. Jake looked around the room at the faces of humanity's last free military commanders. They all knew this was probably a hopeless mission. The curator was too advanced, too powerful, and too alien for humans to defeat. But they also knew they couldn't live with themselves if they didn't try. "We leave in 12 hours, Jake announced. "Dr. Parker, start working on that virus." "Commander Carter, prepare a boarding team." "Lieutenant Mitchell, keep monitoring the curator's communications. Maybe we'll learn something useful." As the meeting ended, Jake stayed behind to talk with Admiral Sullivan privately. "Kate, if we don't make it back, promise me you'll keep the remaining ships together. Find a place to hide and rebuild. Don't let humanity disappear completely." Sullivan gripped his shoulder. "You'll make it back, Jake. You're too stubborn to let some alien collector stop you." Jake smiled sadly. "I hope you're right. But just in case, remember that humans never give up. Even if we lose this fight, we keep fighting until the very end." The Aurora's Edge prepared for its final mission as the curator's massive ship waited near Earth like a dark moon hanging in space. The Aurora's Edge moved slowly through space toward the massive alien ship near Earth. Captain Jake Morrison watched the curator's vessel grow larger on the main screen. It was bigger than any human city, dark and smooth like polished stone. Strange lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Lisa Parker worked frantically in the science lab to finish the quantum virus. The virus was designed to disrupt the biological components of the curator's technology, but she wasn't sure it would work against something so advanced. "Captain," called Lieutenant Paul Mitchell from his communication station, "I'm picking up something interesting. There's a hidden signal coming from the Kepler system." Jake hurried over to Mitchell's station. The Kepler system was far from Earth, on the outer edge of human space. "What kind of signal?" "It's very weak and heavily encrypted, but it's definitely human. Someone out there is trying not to be noticed." Commander Alex Carter joined them. "Could be survivors hiding from the curator." Jake made a quick decision. "Change course for Kepler. If there are free humans out there, we need to find them before we attempt our mission." The Aurora's Edge turned away from Earth and headed for the Kepler system. The journey took 18 hours at maximum speed. What they found there amazed them. Hidden behind the system's largest gas giant was a human colony that still lived and breathed. The settlement was built deep underground on a rocky moon, completely invisible from space. Only their carefully hidden communication array gave away their presence. Governor Ryan Clark met Jake and his team at the underground spaceport. Clark was a tough older man who had commanded frontier colonies for 30 years. "Welcome to Haven Station," he said grimly. "Population 48,000 and dropping every day." Jake was confused. "Dropping? Is the curator attacking you?" Clark shook his head. "Not yet, but we think it will find us eventually. We've been hiding here for 8 months, ever since the first reports of disappearing colonies. Some of our people want to surrender rather than live in fear." Dr. Parker looked around the underground facility. It was impressive, with farms, factories, and living areas carved into the moon's rock. "How have you stayed hidden?" "Complete electromagnetic silence," Clark explained. "No broadcasts, no signals, no energy signatures that could be detected from space. We've been living like our ancestors did before radio was invented." Jake realized this might be humanity's last chance. "Governor, we're planning an attack on the curator's ship. We need your help." Clark led them to a meeting room where his senior staff waited. The colony's chief scientist was Dr. Nancy White, a woman who had studied alien technology for 20 years. She looked excited when Dr. Parker explained their quantum virus plan. "We've been working on something similar," Dr. White said. "Our computers have been analyzing every scrap of data about the curator's technology. We think your virus idea could work, but it needs to be more sophisticated." Dr. Parker and Dr. White worked together for the next 3 days, improving the virus design. They discovered that the curator's ship wasn't just one entity. It was made up of millions of smaller, biomechanical organisms working together like cells in a body. If we can disrupt the communication between these organisms, the entire ship might become paralyzed, Dr. White explained. Commander Carter trained with Haven Station's security forces, preparing for the mission ahead. The colony had good soldiers, but they lacked experience fighting aliens. "Governor, I recommend you evacuate this place," Carter told Clark. "If our mission fails, the curator will probably find you next." Clark looked tired. "Where would we go?" "This is the last free human settlement in the galaxy. If we run, there's nowhere left to hide. Jake understood Clark's position. The governor was responsible for the last 48,000 free humans in existence. Every decision he made could mean the difference between humanity's survival and extinction. We have another problem, Dr. White announced during their final planning meeting. The virus will need to be delivered directly into the curator's central nervous system. That means someone has to get deep inside the ship. Jake had expected this. I'll take a small team aboard the Aurora's Edge. We'll use our stealth systems to get close. Carter immediately volunteered. I'm going with you, sir. You'll need someone to watch your back. Dr. Parker also stepped forward. The virus deployment is too complex for anyone else. I have to go too. Governor Clark looked at the 3 volunteers. You realize this is probably a one-way trip. Even if you succeed in damaging the curator's ship, you might not be able to escape. Jake nodded. We understand. But if we don't try, humanity dies anyway. At least this way we go down fighting. Lieutenant Mitchell had been monitoring curator communications during their stay at Haven Station. Captain, I've learned something important. The curator has been alone for over 1 million years. Its entire species died out long ago. It preserves other species because it can't bear the loneliness of being the only intelligent life left. Dr. Parker looked thoughtful. That explains why it's so careful to preserve the species it collects. It doesn't want them to suffer the same fate as its own people. Jake realized they might have more options than just fighting. Could we communicate with it? Negotiate? Mitchell shook his head. I've tried. It doesn't respond to any human communication attempts. I think it sees us the same way we see laboratory animals. Interesting to study, but not worth talking to. Governor Clark made his own announcement. If you're going to attack the curator, Haven Station will support you. We'll provide supply ships and backup communications. It's better to risk everything than to slowly die hiding in these tunnels. Dr. White finished the final version of the quantum virus. It was stored in a small device that looked like a metal briefcase. This should disrupt the curator's biomechanical systems for several hours. But I can't predict what will happen to the collected species. They might be freed or the disruption might kill them. Jake picked up the briefcase. Inside was humanity's last hope, a weapon that might save their species or destroy the very people they were trying to rescue. Commander Carter gathered his assault team. 12 volunteers from both the Aurora's Edge and Haven Station prepared for the mission. They all knew they probably wouldn't survive, but they also knew that someone had to try. Remember, Jake told his crew, we're not just fighting for revenge. We're fighting for the right to choose our own fate. The curator thinks it's protecting us, but freedom is more important than safety. The Aurora's Edge left Haven Station and began its approach to the curator's ship. On the main screen, Earth hung silent and empty, a reminder of what they had already lost. But in the Kepler system behind them, 48,000 humans continued to live free. Jake sat in his captain's chair and watched the alien ship grow larger. Soon they would know if humanity's stubborn refusal to surrender would be enough to defeat an enemy older than their entire civilization. The Aurora's Edge approached the curator's massive ship using every stealth system it possessed. Captain Jake Morrison watched the alien vessel fill the main screen, its dark surface covered with strange patterns that seemed to shift and move. The ship was easily the size of a small moon, and it pulsed with energy that their sensors couldn't fully understand. Commander Alex Carter led the boarding team to the shuttle bay. 12 volunteers prepared for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission. They carried the quantum virus in its protective case, along with enough weapons and equipment to hopefully reach the ship's central systems. Dr. Lisa Parker checked her scientific equipment one last time. Remember, we need to find the biomechanical core of the ship. It should be heavily defended, but it's the only place where the virus will be effective. Lieutenant Paul Mitchell had discovered something important during their approach. Captain, the curator's ship is hollow in many places. There are vast chambers inside containing what look like preservation systems, millions of them. Jake felt his heart race. Those preservation systems might contain every human who had been taken from Earth and the colonies. His parents, his sister, billions of innocent people might still be alive somewhere inside that alien ship. The shuttle detached from the Aurora's Edge and flew toward a small opening they had detected in the curator's hull. The opening seemed designed for smaller ships, like an airlock. As they approached, it opened automatically to welcome them inside. That's not good, Carter muttered. It knows we're here. The shuttle landed in a chamber that adjusted its atmosphere to match human needs. Lights came on to guide them deeper into the ship. Jake realized the curator wasn't trying to stop them. It was curious about these small creatures who had traveled so far to visit. The boarding team moved through corridors that were clearly not designed for human-sized beings. The walls curved in impossible ways, and the floors seemed to shift slightly under their feet. Strange artwork covered the surfaces, showing creatures and places from across the galaxy. Dr. Parker stopped to study one section of wall art. Jake, these images show hundreds of different species. I think this is a record of everything the curator has collected over the past 1,000,000 years. They found their first preservation chamber after walking for an hour. The room was enormous, filled with crystal pods that stretched up into darkness. Each pod contained a living being from some alien world, suspended in a state between life and death. There must be millions of them, Carter whispered. Dr. Parker scanned the pods with her equipment. The beings are alive but not conscious. They're perfectly preserved, exactly as they were when the curator took them. Jake felt sick looking at the endless rows of collected creatures. The curator saw itself as a savior, but it had created a galaxy-sized museum of living beings who could never truly live again. They found the human section after several more hours of walking. Jake's breath caught in his throat when he saw the familiar faces in the crystal pods. Humans from Earth, from the colonies, from every world that had gone silent. Children, adults, elderly people, all floating in the strange preserving liquid. "We have to free them," Jake said. Dr. Parker shook her head sadly. "Not yet. The virus has to disrupt the ship's central systems first. If we try to open the pods now, the life support might fail." A new voice spoke from speakers hidden in the walls. It was deep and ancient, speaking perfect English. "You are the small ones who refuse to be collected. Why do you resist preservation?" Jake looked up at the ceiling. "You're the curator. I am. I have watched your species for many of your generations. You expand quickly and fight often. Without preservation, you will destroy yourselves within a few thousand years." Dr. Parker stepped forward. "We don't want to be preserved. We want to choose our own fate, even if that means making mistakes. Choice leads to extinction. I have observed this pattern in 12 previous species. They all chose poorly and vanished from the galaxy. Only through preservation can life continue." Jake felt anger building inside him. "What happened to your own species? Did they choose poorly too?" The curator was silent for a long moment. "My people chose to transcend physical existence. They became pure energy and left this dimension. I remained behind to preserve other forms of life so that intelligence would not vanish completely from the galaxy." Carter whispered to Jake. "It's been alone for 1,000,000 years. No wonder it's crazy." The curator continued speaking. "I offer your small ones a place in my collection. You will be preserved forever, safe from war and suffering and death." Dr. Parker pulled out the virus container. "We offer you something different. The chance to understand why choice matters more than safety." "Explain." Jake thought about everything that made humans special. Life isn't about lasting forever. It's about growing, learning, making mistakes, and becoming something better. When you preserve us, you stop us from becoming what we could be. Growth leads to conflict. Conflict leads to destruction. Sometimes, Jake admitted, but conflict also leads to progress. Humans were once primitive animals. We became spacefaring because we chose to take risks and face challenges. If you had preserved us 1,000 years ago, we never would have reached the stars. The curator seemed to consider this. "You prefer uncertainty to safety?" "We prefer freedom to safety," Dr. Parker said, "even if freedom means we might fail." The ship shuddered slightly and Jake realized something was wrong. The curator's attention was focused on their conversation, which meant its control over the ship's systems was weakening. Dr. Parker activated the quantum virus. The device sent out invisible signals that spread through the ship's biomechanical networks. Within minutes, the effects became obvious. Lights flickered, the floor stopped shifting, and the preservation pods began to power down. "What have you done?" The curator's voice sounded confused and concerned. "We've given you a choice," Jake replied. "You can fight the virus and try to maintain your collection, or you can let it work and see what happens when preserved life becomes free again." Throughout the ship, preservation pods began opening. Humans and aliens who had been suspended for years or decades began to wake up. The curator's perfect museum of collected life was becoming chaotic and unpredictable. Dr. Parker monitored the virus's progress. Jake, it's working better than we hoped. The ship's systems are adapting to the chaos instead of fighting it. The curator is learning. Jake understood what was happening. The curator had been alone for so long that it had forgotten what it felt like to be surprised. The virus wasn't just disrupting its technology. It was forcing it to experience change and uncertainty for the first time in millennia. I have not felt this sensation for many years, the curator admitted. Is this what you call excitement? It's one word for it, Jake smiled. How does it feel? Terrifying. But also interesting, Jake made his offer. Work with us instead of collecting us. Help free humans and other species explore the galaxy together. You don't have to be alone anymore. The curator was quiet for several minutes. Throughout the ship, more pods opened and more beings awakened. The perfectly controlled environment became alive with voices and movement and unpredictable life. I accept your proposal, the curator finally said, but I require guidance. I have forgotten how to interact with living beings as equals rather than specimens. Dr. Parker grinned. Teaching someone how to live freely? Now that's a very human thing to do. The Aurora's Edge received a signal from Governor Clark at Haven Station. The hidden colony was emerging from its underground tunnels, ready to help coordinate the massive rescue operation. Admiral Sullivan's fleet moved in to assist with evacuating the curator's ship. Jake found his parents and sister among the awakening humans. They were confused and scared, but alive and unharmed. As he hugged them, he thought about what humanity had accomplished. They had faced an enemy older and more powerful than their entire civilization, and instead of destroying it, they had taught it something new. The curator's ship began transforming itself, opening new spaces for the awakened beings to live and work together. Earth's population returned to their home world, but they carried with them knowledge of the vast galaxy and the countless species that shared it. Jake stood on the bridge of the Aurora's Edge and watched ships from dozens of different species working together. The curator had freed all its preserved specimens, and now the galaxy was more alive and diverse than it had been for 1,000,000 years. Captain, Lieutenant Mitchell reported, we're receiving communications from species we've never encountered before. They want to establish trade and diplomatic relations. Jake smiled. Humanity's empire had fallen, but something better had taken its place. A galactic community where different species could choose their own paths and learn from each other. The Earth was no longer silent, and neither was the rest of the galaxy.